Hello everyone and welcome to the Impact Investment Day. In the second part of the day we're hosting 5 members of the panel who will give us a broader view on social banking. But first I would like to invite Mr. Jure Špitalar, the president of IG Alpbach Slovenija, and Mr. Primož Porar, the management director of Sklad to say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome you on behalf of IG Alpbach Slovenija to our first event. It is our privilege to organize with Sklad today's round table with such distinguished participants. Numerous visitors confirm a big interest in this topic, which truly pleases me. I would like to thank personally, on behalf of IG Alpbach Slovenija, all the experts participating in the round table, especially the honorary president of our umbrella organization, European Forum Alpbach, Dr. Erhard Busek. I wish you to spend 2 pleasant hours in our company and a beautiful rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Spoštovane dame in gospodje, lep pozdrav tudi v mojem imenu. Za protiutež bom sam povedal nekaj zelo kratkih besed v slovenščini. Sem Primož Porar, predsednik uprave Sklada 05, ustanove za družbene naložbe, in vas seveda lepo pozdravljam na današnji okrogli mizi o družbenem bančništvu, ki jo organizira IG Alpbach Slovenija skupaj z Skladom 05. Kot verjetno veste, Sklad je ustanova zasebnega prava, pravzaprav z 3 prednostnimi področji: družbenih naložb, družbenega podjetništva in družbenih inovacij, in veliko veselje mi je, da smo današnji soorganizator tega pomembnega dogodka. Enako kot predhodnik, lepa zahvala vsem tistim, ki ste pripomogli k organizaciji tega dogodka. Zahvala seveda cenjenim in spoštovanim gostom, ki so tu danes z nami, in pa vsem tistim, ki ste si utrgali čas za današnji dogodek. Ker sem praktičen človek, upam, da bo izplen današnjega srečanja tudi za vas praktičen. Če imate kakršnekoli vprašanja, konkretne probleme povezane z družbenim bančništvom, v ozadju seveda stoji tudi denar, potrebe, problemi, smo vedno na voljo v Skladu 05, tako sam kot tudi preostali člani uprave. Jaz vam želim dober in učinkovit dogodek ter seveda lep dan še naprej. Hvala lepa.
Thank you, Mr. Špitalar and Mr. Porar. Now I would like to invite Mr. Karol Sachs, the advisor of the chairman of Kredit Kooperativ, to give us a presentation about social banking and the financial crisis Europe is finding itself in at the moment.
Okay, and I move with space. Where? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Maybe to start, I will say that I am very impressed about all these people, the praise that we are meeting this morning with the chairman of Banking Association. The things change, you know. In 2008, I was invited by Professor Hausner, who was he is still one of the main professors of Economic University of Krakow, but he was vice prime minister and he's member of the board of National Bank. And he introduced me to his colleagues on the campus, saying, I introduce you a chairman of ethics banks, and all the other professors were laughing, saying, what a beautiful joke. There is no possibility of having an ethic bank. And after we have a summer conference with his students, and all the bankers who were there said, there's no problem of ethic in the banks. We have only one goal, it's the profit. It was before Lehman. That Lehman collapse, and before all this mess, it was already up after the subprimes. And I remember the representative of Goldman and Sachs Goldman is the cousin of me. I'm joking. We are not the same sex. And he told, look, in the banking policy, there's two things. You have the carrots, the profits, and you are scared about the policeman. So there was not policeman, so we get a big profits. And it was his explanation about the subprimes. It's just this small introduction to show you that the things are changing, and the things are changing in the good direction. Of course, we make a lot of silly things before the things change, but anyhow, I find it's very nice that the things are changing. Now, if you remember, now we are in the crisis from 2000, who started in 2008. 2007 with subprimes, and everything collapsed the 15th of September with Lehman, with collapse of Lehman Bank. But before we had a crisis of 2001, 2001. We said that this is a problem of Ben Laden. It's not the system who is wrong, it's Ben Laden. So, we are a few of us who decided to create a Federation of Ethics and Alternative Banks. We started with 6 organizations. The only big bank for this area, but it's a middle-sized bank, Credit Cooperative. In time it was 7 billion euros of total assets. Now we have between 13 and 14 billion euros of total assets, 10 years after. And the youngest bank in Europe, who was Banca Etica, who started in March, 8 March 1999 in Italy. So in 2001, they were still very small banks. And with 2 cooperative, financing cooperatives from Belgium, we started a European Federation of Ethics Alternative Banks. Now we are 23 members from 10 countries. I believe that after this meeting, you will come to our annual meeting in Mallorca. I see that there's a direct plane from Ljubljana to Mallorca, so there's no problem. It's wider audience? As much as you want. Why Mallorca? Because we have our Spanish member, the smallest saving bank, Sparkasse, in this part of Europe, who was founded in the 19th century, and they are doing very well. So they will be one of the 2 saving banks who will still rest in Spain. We have another Spain member, who is BBK from Bilbao. They have 33 billion euros of total amounts, but they have to change the rules, the statute, because of the crisis of Spanish market. Just to say why we created this association. First, to exchange our knowledge, to help one to other how to resolve the financing, how to answer for financing of social sector. So we started it 12 years ago. Credit Cooperative started 30 years ago. But I just read the study of Minister of Finance from France that impact financing in France have already more than 30 years of tradition. It's a very particular case in France that the banking system in France and inside banking system, Credit Cooperative is the most, the first bank in this field. The banking system are used to finance the social sector first, And after, with the crisis who started in the 70s, in the end of 70s, in France we started to finance what we called social integration by creating jobs. It's not only helping people when they are unemployment, but helping financing the enterprises who takes the people who are for a long time unemployment, who have other problems, they are getting out from jail, they are using drugs, any sort of social problems, and the state is paying the difference for maximum 2 years, but usually for 18 months, the difference of productivity between a normal worker and a worker who have some problems. And this brings the people back in a very high proportion. 80% of the people who are going in this type of enterprises after they are going through a normal market, job market. It started like this, and this is the reason why we are used to finance this sector for already 30 years. Now, as European Federation of Ethics Alternative Banks, we didn't only exchange our knowledge, our experience, we don't only make the loans together, but we created several tools. First, it was European Society of Ethics Alternative Financing, CFA, who is settled in Padova, in Italy, the place, the headquarters of Banca Etica. Banca Etica, 90% of the customers of Banca Etica is the social cooperatives in Italy, who is a huge sector of nearly 20,000 social cooperatives for whole Italy. And it should be, and it is, but we don't have enough money, but I will come back to this. It should be a venture capital for social entrepreneurship. For time being, we don't have enough money, but the things change. This is the most part of what I will say. It means that in Europe, the European Parliament, with proposal of Commission, voted the 12th of March of this year, so 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago already, a law about a label of European entrepreneurship funds. So CFA can be one of the tools that we can get this European money to build a network of financing social entrepreneurship. Secondly, for this part of Europe, we created an investment fund, which is called COP East, Cooperative Eastern Europe, who should started in 2004. Okay, it started 2007 to finance the institution of microfinance institution and cooperative banks in this in the new countries of Europe. I even came to Ljubljana in 2003 to see if the Cooperative Agriculture Bank cannot join CFA, but it was too late. It was 3 weeks before the bank was transformed on normal company and was, I don't remember with which other bank it was merged, but the Central Bank of Slovenia told, maybe. Anyhow, the Slovenian Central Bank told that they will not keep a cooperative statute for one bank, so they cut it up. So COPES is doing very well. We have already 35 million euros who invest all over the 6 countries of Eastern Europe, and 3 or 4 other countries who want to become European countries of European United Europe, sorry, and we are looking for increase this investment company who is doing very well. And the third thing, it's not the subject for today, but just to say you, FEFISOR, it's also an investment fund for financing the small producers in Africa and Latin America who are selling the goods to the fair trade. So one of the problems of fair trade that there is no enough of products. So this is investment funds, and there's 32 million euros also, and they already invest in 1 year 11 million euros, especially in Africa. Just to tell you what is existing. Now, as I told you, our main target, and what is for me most interesting, it's the exchanging of experience and seeing how in different parts of Europe the people manage to finance the social entrepreneurship. And doing this exchange, this learning, this knowledge, we see that there is a big problem that we have to choose. You know, when you say that you are from ethical banks, everybody is asking what is ethical bank, and then you have to have half an hour of explanation what it can be, and nobody understands what you are speaking about. So we decided that we have to have a focus to say, okay, what we are doing, and we chose Europe Active because the idea was that all the countries of Europe, the idea was in 2009, that all countries of Europe will have the problem of unemployment. And inside unemployment, they will have a problem of a part of society who will get out of the normal market job. We didn't think about the young people who have a diploma and we cannot find, nobody have enough imagination to see that there will be average in Europe is now 25% of young people with diploma. Young is up to 27, if I understand, in European statistic. So average is 25%, and in the countries like Spain, it's 55%, Spain and Portugal. In Italy, it's 40%. It's completely crazy, and European Commission is very scared about the situation, because if you're looking on the Arab Spring or Arab Revolution, they started with the young people who had a good diplomas, they are very well trained, and they are unable to find a job. It started like this. So they are more or less scared that in Europe it will be the same, more or less the same processes. And we put it in the umbrella of Europe Active, the idea of financing the social entrepreneurship. We are also trying to have a common knowledge and common communication about social responsibility investments, because everybody now is social responsibility investment, and everybody is putting more or less something else so he can still make business as usual. Financing the healthcare, this is the problem also a big problem, but for time being, it's especially interesting the Germans and the people from Malta. And of course, we have to think together about regulation of Basel III. Of course, on the level of Basel, we are so tiny that it's very difficult to see. But you know, I don't know if you remember when Stalin was informed that the Vatican joined the allié, I don't know how you say it, the alliance. In the Second War, he asked how many divisions the Pope have. And as you know, he have a huge division because he is so we are thinking that we can try to show that the integration in Basel III, the social targets, it's something very important. And somewhere we get a support, I will come back to this subject, from Mr. Michel Barnier, the Commissary for Internal Market. He is reforming the banking system very strongly. He is the man who is pushing the Basel III, but he, at the same time, I will go back to this. He's saying that there is no development, sustainable development, without social cohesion. So he is our very strong supporter for what we are doing. Maybe a few words so you can understand. I chose two examples of ethical banking. First from Norway. It's not a country of European Union, but it's associated to European Union. Just to show you that you can be a bank with a very tiny figures. 5 million euros of capital. If you say it in France that you will create a bank with 5 million euros, they will, nobody will take it seriously. It works, and it works very well in Norway. Why? Because the banks have obligation to put the part of the technical infrastructure to the other banks. All the banks in Norway, all the banks in Sweden, all the banks in Denmark, they have to be part of 2 or 3 associations of banks, and they can use all the IT together. And this makes possibility of small banks who are gone out from the or very local initiative or from the social sector who created a bank. So we have 3 members like this: Kultura Bank, in Denmark, Merkur Bank, who is quite big for the size of Denmark, and in Sweden, Ekobanken. And all of them are doing quite well because they are using the banking infrastructure from the big banks. It's something to think about when there is now the discussion about new shape of banking system. On opposite side is one of the members, founder members of FIBA. It's Credal from Belgium, and it's very interesting, and you have to think also about this model. You have, I will show it on easier. Here you have a cooperative. In whole Europe, a cooperative can take the saving, not as saving, because then you have to have a banking license, but as a deposit or subscription of capital of a cooperative. Because cooperative, it's a privilege of cooperative law. And so the cooperative are making a subscription of capital as the saving. Sorry. So I'm going back. Here you have an example how it works in Belgium and the French part of Belgium, but you have on the Flemish part FBOOM. It's working the same way. Here you have a cooperative. Cooperative can open the capital and have the subscription of the, it's not the deposits, it's the shares of cooperative. And all the work of studying the project, coaching the project, analyzing project are made in no-profit organization. So they can get the subsidies from the French community or from the Belgian government, from the cities, anyhow. They can get the subsidies. So they are making this part of the job. And the cooperative is then, if the project is good, they are financing, they are giving loans as a for the member of cooperative. So it's a tiny banking system, or financial system, working very, very, very well. Because here you have 3 persons who are working. And the other 14 persons are working here. So you don't have the expensive who will make that you cannot drive a system who have more or less 19 million euros of total assets. It's something very interesting and maybe something that you can imitate. Going back, I will give Credit Cooperative. I will go to the main subject. As I told you, Michel Barnier told there's no sustainable economic performance without social cohesion. This is going back to the idea of Europe, who even I will say it started in the 19th century with Bismarck in Germany and with Napoleon III, Second Empire in France. It's the idea that you need at least a minimum of social cohesion. If not, you will have all the time the problem of revolution and the wars between the nation. So, what Commission make a project to the European Parliament is to create a label of European Social Entrepreneurship Fund. It started to discuss in 2011, officially the 18th November 2011, where they make a big meeting with Yunus, with Mr. Yunus, with all the Commission and some chief of governments, and really a big route. And the law was just voted the 12th of March of this year. So it went for European practice very quickly, and this Youssef label have focus on social entrepreneurship. It's the first time that you have a label who the Commission allowed, even encourage the system of cross-border, so we don't need to have an ELSEF in each country. And they ask all the auditing, rating, monetary authority to help on inclusion of this new sector. And this is the reason why I'm here today. At the same time, the legal, I leave it, you will read something about, but it's, the label, it's quite easy now to be implemented. It's not a crazy, not a very difficult rules that nobody will be able to settle on. It's quite I don't remember the word. Anyhow, it's quite easy to settle, And also the big idea was not to make a definition, European definition of social entrepreneurship, because then it's impossible. For 28 countries, it's really impossible. But to say that all funds have to have approach of social impact. So each fund will say, okay, this is the social target, that social or environmental, also very important, social or environmental target that I want to obtain, and this is the way that I will measure every year if I achieve or no the target. So this make that you can make even the definition for each region, not even for one country, but for each region, depends on the social problems or environmental problems in this region. It's very interesting to cross social and environmental, because we believe that there's 100,000 of jobs in this sector when you have the double approach of social and environmental. So, European Investment Bank give 50 million euros to European Investment Fund to create a first founding of European investment funds. They put 50 millions and they say that European Investment Fund have to find 50 other millions. But the first closing will start in May of this year, because they found that already 3 investors. One of these investors is Credit Cooperative. I asked Credit Cooperative for 5 million euros. We put for time being 1 million euro, but there's the beginning, you know, you have to make always the first step after we see. And what we can do with this first 30 million is to settle the local, the countries who cross-border European Social Investment Fund. For time being, we are working about 2 of them. In Italy, that we called Italy and Mediterranean, because we believe that Malta and maybe south of the France or Corsica can join Italy, because, for example, Malta, it's too small country, too small market to set a fund, social entrepreneurship fund only for Malta. And we are thinking, and then we meet Gregor and your network who is inviting us today, to settle from Poland European Social Innovation Entrepreneurship Fund for Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, and Slovenia. The idea is that we have somewhere the common problems who are our common history after the war. So somewhere we can exchange the experience and help one to other. So this is a very concrete proposal to settle a fund. I believe that from when you are looking at it from Luxembourg, we have to settle the fund more or less 10 million euros. But European Investment Fund can put 40% inside, up to 40%. They can put 15, but they can up to 40%. So we have to find 6 million euros to start. And for me, this European Investment Fund from Poland, we have to find a nice name that everybody will find a part of this name for him. It will be to put the equity or quasi-equity or long-term investment. And we have to make a negotiation with banking system in each country, or maybe only in one country, but I prefer in each country, to finance the short, the normal cycle of production. It means the short-term financing. So I believe that with 10 million euros, if we are doing correctly the job, okay, we have to we can invest 8 million euros on social entrepreneurship enterprises. And if we consider that we need in the beginning 30% of capital and quasi-equity or something like this, it means that we can start to build something about 60, started with 60, with an investment for 60 million euros in 5 countries. It can be quite exciting, and I believe that if we will be successful, there will be much more money, because in the budget 2014-2020, there is already next 92 million euros in the Commission. So this is the concrete proposal that you see on the card. We even put the bird countries, but maybe Lithuania will have some good context. Okay, thank you very much, and sorry for taking so much time.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs, for this interesting presentation. Now let's proceed to the panel of today's discussion. First, I would like to welcome Dr. Erhard Busek, the president of Vienna Economic Forum. Sitting next to him is Dr. France Arhar, the director of the Bank Association of Slovenia. I would also like to welcome Mr. Karl Sachs, the advisor of the chairman of Credit Cooperative. Next to him is Mr. Carl H. Richter, the co-founder and joint chief executive of Engaged Investments UK. And last but not least, Mr. Primož Šporar, the management director of Sklad. We have prepared a couple of questions for the panel to open the discussion. The audience is welcome to participate at the end of the main discussion with their comments and questions to the panel. So first, I would like to ask you, Dr. Busek, what is your experience with social banking, and how would you describe its financial and other supporting systems in Europe?
Many thanks for the invitation and to meet you. I think I'm coming from different angles because I think it happened to me that they have a lot of hats on. Here you can read Vienna Economic Forum. We founded it 10 years ago to campaign for investment, especially in Eastern and Southeastern Europe, but not only Austrian enterprises. I think we are now even larger, including Turks and so on and so on, coming out of the situation of Southeast Europe, which is for sure volatile. And I think a lot of investment is needed. My first hat. I have another hat too, and I'm quite happy to see here IG Alpbach Slovenia. I think we founded years ago. IG's initiative groups, it means, out of the younger generation. Just for those who are not familiar with the history of the European Forum Alpbach, I may tell you it was founded in 1945. I repeat, 1945, 10 weeks after the end of the Second World War. And I'm always admiring the youngsters in this time being there, because for sure it was necessary that Europe is recovered and so on and so on, but they were looking to perspectives and saying we need a common Europe, we need the integrated Europe in this time, 1945 even, and they are keeping this line, and I'm quite happy to be in charge here for a longer time on this. What has it to do with the IG? I think around 15 to 20 years ago, a younger generation came up, being extremely active, and they want to engage, not only concerning the program of the European Forum and Alpbach and what is done. They were looking to networking, quite usual for the young generation of today. Everybody is networking with all the technical possibilities we have, but it was also networking to bring things in a better shape, I think, to move it forward. And so far we have now a lot of groups, and I'm quite happy to welcome also IG Slovenia on this. We had recently a meeting in Tivat in Montenegro, where they were discussing a lot of common activities. It's not only concerning economy or unemployment for the young generation, which is really a question, but for example, the IG Belgrade and the IG Kosovo, you heard it right, Belgrade and Kosovo, we are making together a photo exhibition on Europe. And this photo exhibition was not only shown in Pristina and Belgrade, it was shown also in Brussels in the European Parliament, in the Vienna Parliament, and I think now it will be in Zagreb also, as a sign of the young generation to the questions that are coming up. So, and here I'm arriving at the next moment. I think within these groups, in these initiative groups, the examples, for example, by Mohamed Yunus and so on, came up concerning the social engagement. It was not only primitive saying we have too much capitalism, whatever. They were raising the question how we can use it, I think, to serve the human being, to serve solutions of the problems, and so on and so on. And so far, social entrepreneurship is since some years a real subject of the initiative groups of the European Forum Alpbach. I think that's extremely important. May I say, as a member of the elder generation, I'm not always understanding everything, I have to confess it, but I'm deeply impressed in which way they are engaged, and I'm quite happy that this is an opportunity where the IG Slovenia here is showing their engagement in this direction, because it's coming out of something which is extremely important for our time and for sure for an integrated Europe. It's coming out of an empathy and compassion of the younger generation. Empathy concerning the situation of the young people on the continent and not only here, and compassion, I think, to serve, to be with them, and to look for solutions which are here possible. And so far, a lot of activities were developed, and that's my last head. I'm the chair of the advisory board of the Erste Foundation. The Erste Foundation is the owner of 25% of the Erste Bank. The Erste Bank was a very nice savings bank as I grew up. Now it is one of the regional players here existing, and they are very much engaged socially. I think we are giving social awards, we are campaigning for this social banking and in this direction. And so far I'm looking forward that the IG Slovenia is also doing a contribution in this direction. I think it's really moving forward. I'm not speaking about the technical things. For sure I can it on behalf of the Erste Bank, because we founded the so-called Zweite Bank, second bank. Erste Bank, first bank, Zweite Bank, second bank. What is the meaning of the second bank? To give the possibility to those who are not able to get an accountant in a bank. Because, don't forget, if you have no accountant in our world, you are nobody. You are not really existing. I think you cannot make debts, horrible enough. I think you cannot save money, and so on and so on. It's a question of in an economic identity in a very primitive way. And so far we founded this Zweite Bank, following the example of the founders of the Erste Sparkasse, First Savings Bank. It was a Catholic priest in 1823. 1823, long time ago. What was he doing? He was giving accountants to those who had at this time no accountants, because they were poor out of the Napoleonic Wars and whatever. There are always wars and there are always a lot of poor people, and we are continuing this now. I think Zweite Bank, second bank, is not a very good name for the rest of the region. So far the title is now Good Bee. I think looking to this insect, which is collecting everything and protecting everything as a symbol. It's a symbol of the savings bank too. It's not an easy job. I think we started in Romania. It's not even more difficult, I may say. But I think it started quite well because it's a sign of social responsibility. So I'm adding to the speaker before me, who was quite a lot speaking about the technical things and how it can be done and so on and so on. I'm more speaking on the emotional side. I think that you are engaged. I think to serve the others, to have the feeling how the things are, because you have to know it's not only the problem of the other, having no money, getting no credit, and. It's also our problem, because it has an impact on the situation. I think more and more by the financial crisis, it has to be understood that it is, and we cannot wait, it will pass by, it's touching only the others, it's nothing to do with us. One of the main mistakes of the Europeans. Remember, as Goldman Sachs broke down, in Europe was said, the problem of the Americans, forget, it would never touch us. Then the English were touched, and everybody on the continent said, that's England, too much connected with the United States. And the follow-up was that it reached us, and now we have to deal with this crisis. I think we are living really in a so-called global village. I think it's not anymore a big globe. I think it is a small community, and the connections are so tough that we are interconnected, and we are really suffering if others are suffering. And I think that's the job of the young generation. I'm not saying this because you're saying, this old is saying, not anymore his problem, it's your problem, and you have to do it. No, no, no. It's a learning process in such a way, and I'm quite deeply impressed that such a many young people are here, maybe to give a follow-up on this. You cannot appear as a banker, and I think to collect some money is always very difficult, but you can contribute in this context with your knowledge and with your feeling. And I think we need this feeling of compassion with the others. And I think this social banking and this social activity is a real sign of compassion with the other. I think I'm asking you to be an advocate in this direction, and I think to give the voice to those who have these problems. Otherwise, I think things would not go very well. It's a question of solidarity. Very often, I think we are then discussing about solidarity if we are missing. I think we have to show the solidarity as long as we are even more able to do it. So far, many thanks you are joining, and I wish you all the best for the future of these developments. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your answer, Dr. Busek. Dr. Arhar, how would you evaluate the use of social banking in Europe, and how does the current situation in Slovenia differ from it?
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. Good afternoon to everyone. Very briefly, vis-à-vis presented situation in Europe and in Slovenia. First of all, as you saw in the case of one Norway bank, Mr. Sachs stressed non-profit bank with return on equity 3.88. If I compare those figures with current situation in Slovenia related to Slovenian banking community, you know that total Slovenian banking community, in accordance to this explanation, it's social oriented. Why? Simply due to the fact that already 3 years results are -1. Return on equity, it's -1. But please, this is one part of the side of this story. Very frankly speaking, do you remember who is following to Slovenian development of banking industry? That at the beginning of Slovenian state, we have had so-called deposit credit services, HKS, hranilno-kreditne službe, in agriculture area, mainly in agriculture area. But those services have been not in accordance to banking law. And central bank didn't have supervision on those entities. So that later on, as banking law was changed, those HKS became savings banks. Or in the latest time, they are a part of Deželna banka, you know, who is who in Slovenia. So that we have still in Slovenia savings banks, as well universal banks. And at the time being, we haven't, very formally speaking, any possibility to set up this type of the bank, because equity is prescribed by banking law. It's needed pretty big amount. And we know that in the case of Europe, those institutions are faced vis-à-vis the other competitors, with pretty small capital, with the activities, yes, of course, which are more or less the same one as here in the case of Slovenian banking system. That means on one side they are collecting deposits, and on the other side mainly they are giving different types of the credits. This is also a common picture here of Slovenian 21 bank, so that here it's also a big difference vis-à-vis one general European bank, if we look at a structure of the assets. But anyway, I am sure that also due to the fact, and I stressed already once today, that you know that we have in our constitution, in Article 2, that Slovenia, among the other things, it's also a social state, among the other things, a social state. That means, in my opinion, should be needed also to follow this European development, because social activities right now in the crisis time, are needed. The needs which exist on the market are now. And I stressed to both, to Dr. Busek as well to Mr. Sachs, that for instance in my former bank, UniCredit, we have had on the group level a special fund. And this was not a bank, a special fund with the ambition to support social activities. 2 years ago, we prepared a special tender for different groups here in Slovenia, which are faced with the activities which are needed for some types of the people. And very frankly speaking, we have had 84 those institutions. And we made one analysis, who is who on the market, which are the activities of those groups. And then finally we decided that to 3 institutions we will give special awards. And the first one was 50,000 euros, the second one 25, and the third one also 25. With the other words, this is a type of donation. And the fund was set up with the ambition in 22 countries to collect also on free basis money by employees as well by the third parties. And finally, once in the year, on the basis of one tender, prepared in all countries in which the group UniCredit has the activities. So that I wanted to say that here are many possibilities. And I already suggested, and I took over this type of responsibility, that also in our institution, in a Slovenian Banking Association, despite the fact that, as our colleagues told me, it was one presentation, it was one discussion in the past, but I suppose it is needed to repeat it and to present again and again, and to promote those activities, because we saw also in the case of European Investment Bank, those activities are supported, and you know that also Slovenia is co-owner of European Investment Bank as a state. Similar situation as in the case of EBRD in London. So that all in all, I am very glad that we met us today, because very frankly speaking, this is also one additional fact and argument on the basis of this presentation to promote together with all of you those activities. And yes, of course, with the ambition that money will be in circulation, because if we are not speaking on donations, it is obliged that if a credit or any facility was opened, should be repaid in accordance to the contract, because as I said at the beginning, bad loans, etc., are now in our country, and in those cases, the banking industry is de facto without repayments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Arhar. Mr. Richter, how would you describe the importance of social investments and the trends of European funds for social entrepreneurship?
Hello, and thank you for the question. The first part is very simple, which is to say I personally think it's very important. I think in terms of the road going forwards, there's an incredible opportunity, but there's also an incredible need. There's an incredible opportunity for participants in the financial sector as well as frontline organizations. So there's an exciting emerging way of investing that is presenting itself as an exciting investment opportunity, and on the other side we see a growing number of frontline organizations who, through the changes that are happening to restrictions on traditional sources of public finance and also public sector austerity, there's a need and a demand for finding alternative sources of capital. So that brings us down to what is social investment, and so many times there are so many different interpretations of what it means to different people, and I think in a way that's also okay. If we maybe start from the perspective of a higher level overarching definition, and to say that by social investment we're talking about all sorts of funding, all sorts of capital going into organizations, whether it's loans, debt, equity investments, or quasi-equity, or even guarantees. The one thing that is common with all of those is that it's investment capital, and therefore there's an expectation, as was said earlier on. In other words, it's not donations. In other words, there is an expectation for financial return, but in addition to those financial returns, there's also a very deliberate and an explicit expectation to deliver social objectives. Those can be wide-ranging social objectives. They can be at a very general level in terms of saying, for example, reducing unemployment or helping to care for disadvantaged groups, or they can be at the other end of the scale, very, very specific, and saying, we want to work with one particular community group because we find that there's a certain issue in that particular community group that is a problem, such as autistic kids that are struggling to find work placements or education, and as a result of that, they are on the welfare system. So, I think the last time I was in Slovenia was November 2011, and at that point I remember driving past the stock exchange and seeing what looked like the London Stock Exchange, because there were a whole lot of tents parked outside and a whole lot of banners of protest. And since then the scale of the need certainly hasn't reduced. This is the need of frontline organizations to get access to capital. Certainly the social need in our community at large is still there, just as it was when the crisis started. If not, it's probably become a little bit more acute. And so there's a lot of interest being put into exploring how can we actually start uncovering new business models that aren't necessarily only about one or the other, and the one or the other being either only making money and profit, Or on the other side, you're talking about charity and foundations and philanthropy that's only focused on doing good. The exploration now, which I find incredibly stimulating and exciting, is to see how do we get these two sides to overlap, and is this possible, and can we get this blended model to work, and is it sustainable? There are challenges in it, that's for sure, because we are talking about bringing together two slightly different areas of focus. But at the same time, what we're also starting to see is the opportunity to redress what has become clearly apparent as limitations to our market framework, our capitalist model as it's been practiced. And it's not to say that we throw the one out and introduce a new model, but actually just to have a very frank and adult conversation that the capitalist model is an adaptable system. What we can do is help shape the rules to improve it. And so, markets are social constructs, they're not rules of nature. We have the opportunity and the power to shape those rules. So that, I think, is the exciting opportunity. And that, in a way, leads into what the European Commission is doing, and recognizing that there is a very real need on the ground. We've reminded ourselves today, and absolutely correctly, that when there are tensions in the social fabric, these do bubble over, and they result in very unpleasant situations, potentially of social unrest. Recently in London, where I live, you probably saw it on TV, there were lots of riots and looting and fires, and that just highlights how close to the surface these issues are. And so when people like Commissioner Barnier are launching his social business initiative, I personally find it very exciting when the context of that is linked to the primary strategy of European economic recovery, growth, and social cohesion. So this is not an exciting thing on the fringe. This is part of the mainstream, or at least it is emerging and coming into the mainstream as a discussion. And the exciting opportunity for us is now to explore how do we actually make that work in terms of scaling it up, making it more commonplace. The examples we saw today, particularly Carol Sachs talking about how do we actually start using the opportunities that are being presented by Brussels, which are top-down regulations, but at the same time the one that underpins the model Carol discussed is this new regulation for the European Social Entrepreneurship Fund. And that is a label that fund managers can apply for. So it's not a pot of money specifically, although clearly there are pots of money that can be accessed, European pots, whether the European Investment Bank or European Regional Development Funds and so forth. But what this is starting to do is to actually say, we have mismatches across Europe. We have some areas where there are different levels of experience, and it's easier to maybe raise capital for social investment funds. But how do we actually streamline that whole process? How do we make it as easy for people, say, here in Slovenia as it is in France or England to raise these funds and then market these funds across Europe? And so therefore the USEF is effectively a potential label. It's an optional label, and what it does, it creates a passport to help facilitate better capital flows within Europe and between member states, to help with fundraising, reducing the regulatory burdens and potential costs. And the aspiration, the goal, is that we'll see more capital flows circulating around Europe, and in this context, particularly also investment capital that is deliberately seeking out how do we stimulate, how do we invest in organizations that are helping to solve the social problems and helping to reduce market failure as opposed to exacerbating it. So in a way, it's a very interesting piece of regulation, in that it's one foot is rooted squarely in the concept of the single market and improving, creating a better functioning single market within Europe, and the other foot is squarely in the camp of how do we stimulate and create social progress to help alleviate social problems. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sachs, we heard about the trends, but what could you tell us about the current European situation of financial investments and investment funds for the social economy sector?
I don't, all the policy, I don't know, especially that they are discussing now the budget 2014-2020, and unfortunately, from my point of view, the government's done exactly the contrary they should do. They cut the budget, or the social budget. So I didn't understand this policy. I'm afraid that it's coming from United Kingdom, but not from you. But you know, I believe that the problem of United Europe that they don't have well-definite common policy. I suppose that Dr. Buzek is more qualified than me to speak about, but there's some problem. But, you know, I'm from the school to say that, as was saying the Polish Minister of Labor, one of the main actors of changement in this part of Europe, Mr. Kura, and he was saying that to go somewhere you have to make a first step. You have to start to go somewhere. So for me, social entrepreneurship is a good direction, and we have to walk in this direction. I don't believe that we can resolve all the problems, but we can show that the problem can be resolved if we take a good direction. And frankly speaking, 100 million euros on the European Investment Fund, who can put only maximum 40%. It means that we have to find on the local level 140 other millions. We can make several steps together. It's already quite enough to start the work. And I believe that this is, for me, it's the main goal. I just wanted to say it's not easy anywhere. It's not easy in France, it's not easy in Poland, it's not easy anywhere. It's very difficult because you have to be, on the economic side, sustainable. You have to bring the money back, give the money back. It's not, social sector are not used for this. They are used to be financing and not giving back the money. So there's a big challenge to explain the people, and when we are speaking about interest rate, this became very, very, very hard. The discussion are very, it's always a hard discussion. And secondly, you have to keep still your social target. And really it's not easy, it's case by case. And I believe that we have also a big possibility of developing with franchising. I don't know why, you know, the 10 organizations already invite the system of getting the housing equipment to make a second-hand market, and why in Slovenia you have to try to know how to do it and creating internal market. You can take already franchising, not only economic franchising, but social franchising, because depends the people, the technology is not the same.
Yeah, Dr. Buzek, you wanted to add something?
Only a short remark concerning what are the governments doing and so on and so on. I'm a fan of European integration. I'm extremely critical how it is performed in the moment because it's done by the European Council. This is without responsibility towards democratic institutions. I think the government's doing everything behind the bushes. And I think you cannot really look through. I think here Europe is incomplete. and we have to move forward in this direction. Special remark to the subject you touched. I think it's quite for sure necessary to create for such questions which are important for the future a public. I think we have not enough public. I think we have not a really European public. For sure, we have the Euro News, but this is limited. This is a press agency and nothing else here. If you go today in the evening to your TV sets and you are switching through these 45 programs, or how many, you can see here, you will see in every of the national channels is a talk show. I was always looking where the European talk show, because translation is not a problem. We have already simultaneous translation, and we are really able to make European championships on nearly every field together, not in political discussions. I was going to the European Broadcasting Union with the help of a Slovenian, Boris Bergant, he was vice president, and I was asking, why is there no European talk show to gain more public for these questions? And then I got a real nice answer. Then we have to divide the advertisement, and nobody wants it really. But this is a key question of information. So personally, I may say, beg your pardon for this nasty joke, we have only one real European talk show. That's the Euro Song Contest. Because I think everybody is voting then in favor of, here you can see who is in favor of whom. So for my proposal for a longer time is let's skip the songs. I think that would not be a problem, and let's make the voting, because we can learn a lot about our relations. I think we need such a European public. But without European public, you cannot make a real democracy. Aristotle said very nicely, democracy reached so far as the voice of the herald. Where is the European herald? That's a request to the young generation. Thank you very much for doing a good job.
Thank you, Dr. Musek. So the last question now for Mr. Sporar. What does the social sector in Slovenia need for its further development, and where do you see it in the near future?
This is a hard one, actually, because probably every of you would have a different answer, but I'll try to give some of my thoughts on this one. But before that, I love the idea of having Eurosong without songs. That's a nice one, actually. Going back to the needs of the social economy sector in Slovenia, I think there are several things that we should discuss, especially in the lights connected to the social investment. First, where I see the problem is probably a limited understanding of potential of social investment and social economy sector in Slovenia. I think this is very strongly related to just yesterday, for example, I came from Brussels, where a commission negotiated with the European Economic Social Committee on the so-called social investment package, where for the first time I had the impression that the social investment is not seen only as a cost. Investing in people doesn't mean only a cost. You have to think more innovative. You have to think that social economy in Slovenia is not only about losers spending the money that need donations. This is, I think, one of the changes in mind, both in the sector, but also with other stakeholders, saying that this has a huge potential. Not only in terms of organizational scope. We have 28,000 legal entities. We have a lot of knowledge, a lot of potential in this sector. If we link it to the social innovation, to the other fields, I think there could be a huge impact, both economical as social impact in this country. So thinking about the potential of sector and open the doors for the investors for these new ways of approaches, I think is one of the key points where that should be done. Being practical, the Fund 05, together with the partners, for example, in last year, organized a social innovation competition. There is a huge potential for different innovations that could be very useful, and by the end of the day could be a sustainable economic project or activity. So you just have to think more open in that sense. Surely the problem is what you all would agree probably is in a way undeveloped social financial market in Slovenia. There are problems with finances. you can get the finances through the tenders, through the donations, and so on. But if we talk about social investment, what Karol is talking about, for example, about the debt, hybrid capital, or the bridge loans, guarantees, microcredits, and so on, there is a very limited possibilities and very limited amount of money available on the market. And that surely is a problem for those who are entering into the world of social entrepreneurship, especially at the initial stage, at the first most vulnerable stage, where they have a hard time to get the money in classical banks. So I think in this sense, the activities of the fund and of the partners are very product oriented. What we need, for example, in the last 3 months, we started with offering bridge loans for those of you who have European projects or you have projects financed from the public sources, but mostly you have a problem with liquidity. You get the money after the project is implemented or ended. So getting a bridge loan sometimes causes a problem. And there was huge interest. In the last 3 months, we gave approximately €500,000 of bridge loans, which clearly shows that there is a need for such product. And honestly, I was trying to approach to individual banks in last year, and I have a hard time to understand why at least some of them didn't decide to offer such product on the market, because it's not very risky one, and they could get new clients by the end of the day. So this is a niche, but it depends really how you see it, because if the banks see it as somebody approaches as a not-for-profit, as a social NGO, we don't know what that is, it's a problem of due diligence and so on and so forth. It's kind of it's a different language from the financial world as from the social economy world, and that language probably needs to be better understood in each of these sectors. Beside bridge loans, we're trying in this year, as explained in the morning session, we're trying to build a guarantee fund. We're trying to build a social investment fund and go along with the emphasis of the European Union on the social entrepreneurship fund. I think Slovenia is ready actually to gather the money from the investors and to play a part in the story that Karol presented. And that can be reinvested in a very useful way to all those social entrepreneurs that are starting their projects and activities. Probably the lack is also related to the lack of knowledge in a way, and to the support to the social entrepreneurs and to the NGOs starting this. This is another very concrete project that we're working on, is to build and the hub, the social innovation center, or whatever you call it, which would actually help those who have idea but are not capable to do it alone, that needs support, and would also help the investors and others who are financing these things to reduce their risks. So you need to be in a way, a kind of a networking facility to actually gather all the interest and to help every and each of them in this, what I call social financial market. And the third one, I think it's also a permanent one by the end of the day. It's a permanent dialogue between the stakeholders. It's a funny thing, but probably none of us would be aware that we wouldn't probably have conferences in last years about social banking, about these new types and innovative finances, if we would wait for the Ministry of Finance, for the Ministry of Economic Development, for the Ministry of for Labor and Family Affairs. No. Basically, 5 years ago, this was recognized as a priority from the Ministry for Public Administration, which is a funny way, actually, to develop one strategic area for the whole country. But without that support, none of this would happen in these later stages. Today, in the morning, we had Magister Stepišnik as a Minister for Economic Development and Technology saying this is clearly a priority. And it's wonderful that he was there. But what I'm saying here is you have to be innovative. You have to pull strings together and play with different players that see this as an opportunity. And I think there is a lot of work to be done by what I call social economy sector and organizations, which can play a vital role towards the financial sector, towards the public sector, but also to what we call here in Slovenia non-governmental sector. But what I'm trying to say here is it is a process. It takes probably step-by-step approach. But I think in Slovenia we were able, especially in the last year or two, to deliver very concrete products that can actually help you to start your social entrepreneurship path or to make it easier. And that's clearly resulted, even a crisis time, that maybe that's the crisis time actually are helping towards a faster development of this area in Slovenia. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sporer. Now, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to Mr. Richter and Dr. Busek. So thank you both for participating. And we will continue with the discussion. So this is the end of the main discussion. Now I would like to invite the audience to participate with either comments or questions on social banking. So if you have any questions, just please raise your hand and you will get a microphone and you can tell it to us.
It's a good way to start the discussion. Yeah? You have one? Go on.
You can also ask it in Slovenian. We will try to
I speak
translate.
Polish, so I can more or less try to understand.
I think I will be able to do it in English. Well, we have a quite concrete project. We are creating a cooperative. Basically, the idea is very simple. In Slovenia, currently, we have 125,000 unemployed, approximately 250,000 people that are living on the verge of poverty. And we have, according to the statistics, 32,000 hectares of the land that is not cultivated. So idea is to create cooperative that will help find land and people to work on land. And one part is already going on that started also, totally without us. And it's, I think now, right now it's 150 unemployed people in a cooperative that already have 50 hectares of land to cultivate. So what we need, the problem is that we need to invest into the framework to create kind of a software that will support all this stuff, because you need not only to show where the land is and to connect the unemployed people with the farmers and where to get a tractor or stuff like that. And but the problem is that you need to have this software open source, and you can actually distribute it to all different kinds of initiative. So basically, it's a lot of investment, but it's not coming back from the software. It's coming back from the turnover of the vegetables that are grown and stuff, and this takes time. So we need to find a long-term financing to do that. That's the project. Short, very short.
Yeah, I can say you that you have three very interesting experience in Europe. First is in France. You have two very interesting things. First is development of what we call AMAP. It's Association for Maintenance of Peasant Agriculture. And the idea is that as you are selling directly your goods from agriculture, especially the vegetables and fruits, but now it started with meat and cheese also, and of course the volaille, how you call it, the chicken and the duck, so all these things who are easy to produce. You are selling it directly to the customers, and the customer is giving is buying the food for 6 months or 12 months. He's saying how many he will buy, and he's paying, of course, every month, but he's saying how many he will buy. So the people who are making the agriculture, they are just producing the amounts that they have a customer for this. And it's working very well, and the statistic is that you can live as you can have enough incomes with 2 hectares, and with 4 hectares you have a quite good revenue. In the normal agriculture in France, it's at least 20 hectares. It's even 30 hectares to be sustainable as agriculture. Here you have 4 instead of 30. Of course, you have to have in the proximity of your farm, you have to have a big town or a town, so the customer will come. But it's developing very quickly. In Italy, you have the gas. It's called groupement, the social bank, groupement d'achat social. I don't know how you say it in Italian. It means that the people are making a crowded buying. It means that, you know, it started that somebody was going to Sicilia, and all the others who are living in this town, who are originally from Sicilia, they ask him to bring the oil from Sicilia, because it's very different to that oil from Puglia or other region of Italy. Everybody is very fond about his region in Italy. And it's several million people who are now acting like this. So it makes the food rural producing very cheap. And in France also you have now the local community have the policy that they are buying only the goods, for example, 50 kilometers around the town. So in the schools, where the children are eating in the canteen, other places, they are buying only from the local producers and pushing the market very strongly. And in the end, you have also in France, it started 8 years ago, Terre de Rien. In Italy, it's called Terra Futura. It's the people who are buying the ground to settle on this ground only organic agriculture. The deal is that the peasant, the people who are working in agriculture, they will do only the organic agriculture, and the people are investing to buy them the ground. It's bringing return on investment are very, very social. It's 2% in the best situation, but I believe that you can have better return on investment if you put on this area also the soft energy, because then you bring more results in the project. So we can look on your project with our friends from Slovenia and see if we can try to finance it to see if it's sustainable. The other projects? Yeah. Sorry, stock exchange.
Hello, my name is Sandy. I'm a young social entrepreneur. We have, in December last year, we established a social company, and we want to provide two things in Slovenia. The first one is affordable and sustainable houses from natural materials like wood, clay, straw for young families. Because in Slovenia is one of the huge problem in Slovenia is that youngsters stay at home for a very long time.
All over Europe.
Yeah, well...
Nothing particularly for Slovenia.
Yes.
So, you know, in France you are young men up to 40 years. I'm not joking. The banks became crazy. They're asking the parents to sign that you will pay back the mortgage up to 40 years. And from 41 you became senior. So yes. They are not giving you, they are not providing you money because you are too old. So there's never a good moment to take a mortgage loan. I'm not joking. It's a pity, but it's like this.
Okay. So we want to change that in Slovenia in some ways, and we have also we find some solutions. So we want to work on that issue. And the second one is we want to provide jobs for young people. Easy, we would say. Well, it's not so easy. So my question for guests is what do you suggest? What would be the best way to start? And yes, maybe some advice in that way.
You want to say something? No, you have a very difficult problem who can change from one region to other. So you don't have an easy solution for all over Europe. First, in building houses, you have a fantastic technological progress. So you can build today a nice house in more or less easy way, but certainly if you compare what you were building 40 years ago, 30 years ago, it's an easy way to do it. At least it can be sustainable after on exploitation. You have to look for the project, the difference between buying the materials and the work. More you spend for the work, better it is because it's fighting against unemployment. We have very fine, nice experience with, you speak a little bit French? Paille. How you call it paille? You know when you have, when you have the corn, what is this part? How it's called? When you have the, you know, to make a bread, have a corn, to make a flour.
Corn.
Yeah, and this part is called, how it's called in English? Słoma in Polish.
Steblo od pšenice.
No, you remember the story of 3 little pigs? The first house was built from? Straw. Yeah. We as Credit Cooperative give a prize for social innovation for the people who are building the houses from straw. It's working very well, it's very, very cheap. They have, it's a cooperative. They have a sharp ethical approach that you can buy the things only, of course not the iron, but all other things you can buy 15 kilometers around the place that you are building the house. It's going very quickly. And for ecological energy point of view, it's fantastic. It's very well isolated, but it's going very quickly, this technology in France. You have in Holland a very interesting experience who didn't work in France of transformation of containers on housing. They put it in Amsterdam for students. And after the French people also exported in Haiti, in France it didn't work. In France, to make architecture from metal, from iron, it don't work. It's culture problem, you know. For France, you have to use the stone or the, you know, something hard. The house have to be built forever. No, it's really, it's a big culture problem. I make the study of urbanists, and I know that the problem of housing is first of all a problem of culture, of history. There is very few housing who are adapted for the climate or things like this. Of course, here you have the wood, who should be quite cheap, and it can be the solution. Even exportation, because the houses from wood can be exported quite easily to the other countries. But there's no, you know, there's no solution like this. One of the best enterprise of integration is in housing, and they are using only wood and the, not stones, but cegła, how you call it, the bricks. They're using the bricks who are warm. Yeah, not on the sun because it's in Calais, and so you don't have a lot of sun, but you have a lot of wind. So it's so they take technology from Africa, and it works quite right. On ecological point of view, the cost of heating a house of 110 square meters on 2 stages is 37 euros a month in winter. So, you know, fantastic. Yeah. And this is social housing. But it's quite expensive because very labor intensive, but it's maybe what you are looking for. So, but first go with the story of 3 little pigs and build the house from the store. I found it fantastic. I asked them to change the song, but they didn't send me a new version.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Franz Bogic. I'm a member of Slovenian Parliament. A few weeks ago, I was Minister for Agriculture and Environment. So this is today a very interesting discussion. And when we speak about this social economy, I think that in Slovenia it is necessary, because these are new products, it's also necessary to change a little philosophy in Slovenia. I think that in last 20 years, when was big increase in economy, we thought that everything will come and there will be no problem. And I think that, as you said, the crisis also a chance for us, a chance for these products. As I said, I was a Minister for Agriculture, and in which is also included forestry. I can say a few words about one project which I think is very interesting and which is very important, and it's I think that we have a lot of opportunities to develop these projects. It's one project where we connect forests, wood. We have 60% of all land which is our forests, and there is a project of wood center, where is also preparing wood for furniture, the rest for as biomass for energy, and the energy is including for heating There is one project where we will be hitting 4 prisons. When it's very interesting that these prisons use energy which cost around 705,000 euros per year, and the change instead of oil there will be wood, and the rest of energy during the summertime and springtime it will be used for producing of vegetables, and included these people which are as prisoner there, and also people from these villages around Šentrupert. This is one very good municipality in Slovenia. And for me as engineer of agriculture, it's also very interesting that last years we speak about agriculture. 5-6 years ago there was no perspective in agriculture, and I think that this crisis is also the change that we can see our roots and work on the land, work in forests is also a possibility for survive, possibility for people, especially in such a times where is the solidarity and social things are very important. And what is very important, I think that we speak about real projects, not subsidies, social subsidies. We speak about real projects, and I think that here in this point it's also necessary to change a little our philosophy, because when we speak about social things we usually think about subsidies and for what is state responsible for me. I think that it's necessary to change also philosophy. I'm responsible for myself, but such instruments are common instruments to support people. So that thanks for this event today, and I wish you good luck, and I will support this project as it will be possible.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any more questions? Yes, okay.
I want to say 2 things in what you said about that. First of all, I remember that Mr. Kuran, that I thought was one of the key persons who made the changement in Poland in '89 and before Solidarność and all this. He spent 11 years in jail, and when the communist in this communist system, and he was saying that the work in jail is the most important thing to make after the integration of the people. So this is a very good and right direction. But frankly speaking, we collapsed with this in Poland. We tried it and we were unable to do it. And secondly, what is important in agriculture is what we make in Poland, and on this we are quite successful, is that the fair trade of Europe, of European agriculture, is the local products. And I believe that this can be a chance for Slovenia to protect the agriculture of Slovenia and make the job in agriculture. But you have to have a strong state policy about creating, the geographic protect products, and you have to identify them, and for this you need the state or European money. But it can be, in your case, it can be something very interesting because you have a very specific country with a lot of tourists, so it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to.
Dolores Corres, I'm a social entrepreneur, also member of GETSES. Very, very short questions. Do ethical banks, or maybe also other banks, use services of social enterprises? I mean, we are full of words, how this is the future, how this is good for sustainable economy, sustainable Europe, but on the other hand, it's very difficult to come into the business and say, okay, I'm a social entrepreneur, we do business, and we would like also to work for normal business just to provide some outsourcing or something like that? Thank you very much.
It depends. A very good question. I started to work in Credit Cooperative 31 years ago, and I pushed to start to consumer with social enterprises. It takes 25 years, so it's not easy. It's not easy, so I cannot once more say, look, make it like this and it works. But you, the small ethics entity like Kultura Bank, like Ecobank, and like Banca Etica, they are using everything, Bank Alternative Swiss, everything is saying from where is providing the products, the goods, who built the house, the building, and all this, everything have to come from the social sector. In France, it's much more complicated, but you have to be careful also that it not become an alibi for the commercial company to say, okay, we are buying something from social sector, so look, we are social responsibility company and we can make the business as usual. But you are right, it's a very important market, and frankly speaking, the website and all this new technology of information makes the things much more easy than 20 years ago. So you should use the very modern technology of information to get the market.
Okay, thank you. Would you like?
Yeah, I would just like to add that it's a very vital question also for Slovenia, actually using these products and services and being practical organizers of this event. When you will leave this room, you'll see our colleague Irina Tomazina outside. She was a last year winner of the social innovation competition, offering you a healthy soup that she's offering to the kindergartens. So you're not allowed to go to the restaurant for lunch. You need to use her service. No, I'm joking, but it's one of the questions that we would have to work on also in Slovenia, actually how to introduce these products better in the market and try to connect them with corporate social responsibility, business excellence, and other players that seem to be keen to support the social economy sector.
Okay, we have one more question and then we're closing the discussion for today, so please.
Thank you very much. I'm Marjan Huč from the Slovenian Association of Development NGOs called Sloga. I would actually have a question concerning your experiences, Mr. Sachs, about the time value of money. How do you determine it within the social banking? But before asking actually this question, if I may just give 2 or 3 sentences of explanation why I'm asking it. As Primož already noted or explained quite well, in Slovenia, NGOs and specifically the NGOs we are associating, we are spending or able to gather approximately 2 to 5 million euros per year, primarily grants. I'm speaking about 30, 40, 50 different NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are working primarily in countries in development. But to be able to implement the projects, projects in those value, actually, they need quite often, actually, so-called bridge loans to assure the liquidity. We are having, actually, and facing huge problems with Slovenian banks because they are not willing to adopt any kind of, actually, bridge loan if you don't have a real property like a house or something or a deposit actually, just as a guarantee. And in social banking, do I understand it correctly that it might be different? Not saying that the guarantee will not be needed, but actually how you determine the time value of money. And the question is particularly relevant when you finish the project, which usually is not financed in advance, but you get actually the reimbursement of the costs when the fund financer or the funder adopts your project report. And this is actually not determined by time. It should be in 3 months after the finishing of the project, but sometimes it happens that you get the money even 6 or months later or even later. So if you agree with the fund or with the bank actually for a certain interest rate for the bridge loans actually, and if you get actually the reimbursement from the financer much later as foreseen, do you have any kind of good practices as not just to extend the interest rates which were included at the beginning or calculated at the beginning?
You know, it's a very difficult it's very difficult problem. Well, first, if I understand, Primoz have a project of building a guarantee fund, so he will explain it after. But guarantee fund needs a lot of customers, so if 1 or 2 collapse, that all will not collapse, so it's not so easy, but it's a good idea. Now, for the European, because you are speaking especially about European loans of financing, it's a very difficult subject. First, you have to build your project that the last payment, it's your profit, okay? Because you never know. In France, it was several years, for at least 15 years, European Commission systematically didn't pay the last part. So you have to, if you take a loan, a bridge loan for the last part, you will have the difficulties first. It's better now in the European Commission. It's much more regulated. It's not, cannot be completely, you know, depends of the man who you are speaking with. But anyhow, you have to be careful. Secondly, the big difficulties is that European Commission are not allowing you to put the cost of interest. And this, but I know, for example, in 2002, I was speaking in Slovakia, and in Slovakia, the government put in the European funding that they will refund the cost of interest. And for me, it's, of course, you have to negotiate the amounts, but this can be negotiated on the ministerial level. But the government can ask, because it's European money, but it's negotiated with each country, even each region. So you have to ask, but in Poland we didn't manage to do it. So they created a system who is called PAF-PURE, no-profit organization funding, but it's not a good way to do it, because they are, you know, the people get more money in the organization and they take the money from their pocket and they are paying interest. It's not a good way to do it. So I encourage you to ask for your regional authorities to say, okay, up to some amounts that you have to negotiate with the banking system, because there's no reason to pay 12% or 15% of interest with the pretext that you don't have, you are not sustainable, you don't have goods as guarantees, so the bank can increase the interest. So you have to make a good negotiation about this, but for me it's a problem for government. It's not the problem of each social entrepreneurial institution. This is a global negotiation with the banking system. 1 or 2 banks, it's enough. You don't need 21 banks of the system. It's enough 2 or 3 to have a choice also.
To be very concrete, in the last 3 months, as I said, approximately €500,000 was spent on bridge loans for these applicants. Around 10 to 15, 12 probably, applicants went through the proceeding with the help of TISE, which we already explained. what you can get is a bridge loan up to 175,000 euros, up to 3 years period. What you need to do is you need to be able to pay the interest. If this is not eligible cost, you need the money for that. And we're negotiating and we're trying actually to build on what Karol just said, to see whether there could be a special fund for the interest or for some kind of a co-financing of that, because this is additional cost usually within the EU budget, not eligible one. What is advantage of this is that you don't need a guarantee. You don't need a guarantee for that. So what we're trying to do is, as explained, to have a guarantee fund which would be funded also from the part of the income coming from the interest, but it's a long way to do it in that sense. But these organizations that already obtained these bridge loans, they didn't need a guarantee. So it is a useful product for those who have signed contract with the EU or national or local authority co-financing their project. But it's a very individual approach. We scan the whole organization, we see if there are other debts, we see the capacity of the team, whether the project will be implemented, we monitor that. So it's all about how are you going to deliver what you promised within the project context. It's all about that. So it's kind of a quite demanding proceeding, and it takes several weeks to go through that and to scan it so that you finally get the money.
Okay, thank you all. The discussion has come to an end. Thank you, members of the panel. Thank you, the audience. I hope, we all hope that you received some useful information that you will be able to use in your further work. Have a nice trip home.
Don't forget about the healthy soup outside. So.